Good evening. Good evening. How's everyone? Awesome. Thanks to Joe's Pub, House of SpeakEasy. I'm so honored to be part of the Norton series. I thought we would switch it up a little bit. I come from a tradition in which storytelling is not a spectator sport. The call and response tradition in which you get to shout back at me if you like. So just to think about this theme of being bold, I want to trouble the idea that boldness is necessarily a good thing, or we might say, who gets to be bold? And with that in mind, I want to try a little something here. This is my left. Your catchphrase is simply be bold. On this side, the opposite, your group is get real. Those in the middle, you get to choose now. Bold, real, all right? So let's just test it out just to see. And I want you to be in character, like be really obnoxiously bold and be really blasé, like get real, all right? So let's try it. Be bold, get real. Be bold, get real. Okay, now, after I'm gonna point to you, that's your catchphrase. Space travel. Be bold. Free public transportation. Get real. Colonize Mars. Be bold. Decolonize Earth. AI superintelligence. Cancel student debt. Build underground bumpers to survive the AI super apocalypse. Build quality affordable housing for all. Spend billions of dollars on war and weapons. Stop the genocide, ceasefire now. Get real. So you get the picture. Boldness is monopolized, while realism is mass-produced. We are in many ways trapped inside the lopsided imagination of those who monopolize power and resources to benefit the few at the expense of the many. These futurists let their own imaginations run wild when it comes to bending our digital and material realities. But their visions grow limp when it comes to transforming our social reality so that everyone has the chance to live a good and meaningful life. With that in mind, I thought I'd share 3 short stories with you that help shape my perspective on innovation, imagination, inequity. For some context, I come from many Souths. I was born in South Asia, India to be specific, moved when I was 3 to South Central LA, the Leimert Park neighborhood. When I was 9, I moved to South Carolina, Conway. For boarding school, I went to Southern Africa, Swaziland. And for college, I went to Southwest Atlanta, Spelman. Many Souths. What that means is that I look at the world from its underbelly. Progress at whose expense? Boldness, who gets left out? So 3 short stories for you. When I was 15, my family packed up house in South Carolina. Oh, and I missed one stop on this South tour. When I was 15, we moved to the South Pacific, to the Marshall Islands. And, there wasn't internet then, and I had like boxes of my dad's Star Trek episodes, and so I became a really hardcore Trekkie. And once I finally made friends, they started taking me around, not only around the capital island of Majuro, but to neighboring islands. And one of the most formative experiences for me during this time was visiting 2 neighboring islands, Kwajalein and Ibai. Kwajalein, where there is now a US military base and has been for decades. It looks like a combination of like The Truman Show and Stepford Wives. It's like a suburbia smack dab in the middle of the ocean. Baskin Robbins golf courts, people walking around with their strollers, And a short ferry ride away is the neighboring island of Ibai, where over time, with the nuclear testing after World War II, people had been displaced, continuing to experience the side effects of radiation fallout. It's known as the ghetto of the Pacific. The concentration of people there, the rate of infectious diseases are off the charts. And these are side by side. And in some ways, it was my first lesson that utopias need dystopias, that there's a relationality to power and to inequality, that if there's an underserved, there's an overserved. But even later, when I would look up on Microsoft and type those two words in, there's a little red line that comes under overserved. It's not a word, except I've been talking about it enough now, I think it's been added to the dictionary. That was the first experience. The second experience was in my early 20s. I was a grad student at UC Berkeley, and I was studying the social dimensions of biotechnology, looking at the state's investment in stem cell research, regenerative medicine. And I was watching and observing scientists doing really sci-fi level work, like growing human heart tissue in a petri dish, beating in a petri dish. And I thought about how hard it is to grow empathy for other human beings in our everyday lives. And specifically, the same ballot measure in which residents went and voted up a $3 billion investment in stem cell research, we voted down a similar measure that would have invested in health care for all. So we could imagine the future of medicine, but not the present of affordable health care. Regenerating human bodies, but not an ailing body politic. And so again, thinking about how often that kind of futurism is predicated on many different types of inequality and holding those in place. Innovation producing containment in some ways. The last experience is actually a few weeks ago. I was in Atlanta for work, and remember I went there for college, so it was a little bit of a homecoming. And Atlanta, when I got there, I was reminded its kind of brand now as a city is that it's Silicon Peach or Techlanta, right? That's the marketing of the city. And at the same time, it's the city with the highest income inequality in the nation, reminding us how often the fantasies of some require the nightmares of others, that and so often when we've had tech booms, predictably, it causes displacement, rising costs of living, and increasing in policing to manage that inequality. And Atlanta's no different. One of the things that's been unfolding over the last several years is that city officials decided to invest $90 million to build Cop City, a massive training facility that would train police from all over the country. And to do so, it would have to cut down Weelaunee Forest, which is considered one of the 4 lungs of Atlanta, protects against heat waves and floods, and is really important to the environment there, and is located next to a predominantly Black working class community. And so thinking about how the fantasies of some become the nightmares of others, and the role of policing, high-tech policing, low-tech policing, the militarization of that city is something that I bring to you tonight. Because first, ATLians have been pushing back against this lopsided imagination where schools are closing in the city, but they have money to build Cop City. From college students to clergy, environmental activists to indigenous leaders, they're inviting us into an alternate imagination where our ecological and our social well-being are connected, but not without a price. Yesterday, 61 Cop City protesters were arraigned on bogus racketeering and domestic terrorism charges, most of them facing 5 to 10 years in prison for nonviolent protest, setting a vile and dangerous precedent to silence the movement. And this doesn't just apply to Atlanta, because many other cities are investing these type of resources into cop cities all over, and watching at the repression that's happening in that city as a model for what's going to happen elsewhere. Today, November 7th, 2023, would have been the day that Atlantans would have gone to the ballot to vote on a referendum about whether they really wanted Cop City, because it was pushed through without residents knowing initially. And so they gathered the signatures for the referendum over months. They were told they needed a minimum of 75,000 signatures. They collected 116,000. And when they presented those signatures, the city found all kinds of ways to suppress the vote and scratch out names, discounting their petition, so it's not on the ballot. The struggle continues. Like Atlanta's forest defenders, we have to be bold when it comes to our social vision. But how? The first step is to stop policing the borders of our own imagination. A world without prisons? Ridiculous. Schools that foster the genius of every child? Naive. Work that doesn't drive us into the grave? Impossible. A society where everyone has food, shelter, love, in your dreams. Exactly. Thank you.